Well, good morning. I'm excited to be back in the building. Last week I was out. I was actually with the family. We were out in Utah skiing, and it was a lot of fun. It was actually, believe it or not, it was colder here when we left Thomasville than it was the first day in Utah, but the nature figured itself out, and we had some fun times. But I'm glad to be back in here. It's good to see some of y'all. Brad, it's good to see you back there. But I'm excited about today because we're in our series called Lessons in Love, and Rob kicked us off last week, and I think it's really important for us to really just dwell in his presence during this series and understand what it's like to truly love like Jesus. And I think that is what's going to be so powerful with the story that we're going to open up with today and what we're going to read in his word. And but I have a question for you. How many of you like to keep track of things? How many of you like to keep a really detailed ledger of things? Keep it really detailed? Anybody? Like really detailed? Well, every person in some way or another, and this applies to a lot of different ways, we keep a ledger, whether we realize it or not. And you don't have to be an accountant to keep a spreadsheet, but we all have an emotional, relational, and mental ledger that we like to keep track of how people treat us. And I'm sure now that you hear that, you're going, okay, yeah, I definitely keep track of how people treat me, and I definitely want to remember what it feels like when certain situations, and maybe if I was hurt, or maybe if I was made feel good, all these different things, we like to keep track of those things. And a couple years ago, there was a documentary of one of the greatest athletes of our time that came out called The Last Dance, and it was about Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan made a phrase so wildly popular, it actually became a meme later on afterward, but the quote was, and I took that personally. Now, in my life, if I'm constantly going by this quote, it's probably not going to be a very good life. I'm going to be really frustrated. I'm going to be really, just constantly perturbed. But he was so good at taking this quote, taking anything that someone said to him, whether it was a positive thing, a negative thing, and he took it personally. And he was the type of person, which is why he's the greatest of all time. I know there's some people in here that would argue that with me, but he took that and turned it into the most motivation that he could find. So that one time there was a game where the guy came up to him and just said, "Hey, nice game, Mike." Whether he meant it or it was sarcastic or whatever it was, Michael Jordan took that personally. And he went out and dropped 50 the very next game. He was so good at that. And let's be real. None of us can play basketball like Michael Jordan. I cannot shoot or dunk like Michael Jordan. But there's one thing that you and I have in common with him is that we track how people treat us. He was so good at tracking what people said. He used it as motivation. He used it as fire in his heart so that he could be better at what he did. And let's be real. All of us do that as well. We do the same exact thing. We track how people treat us. We log offenses. We store disappointments. We keep quiet tabs on who said what, or who didn't show up to the party, or who let us down, or who withdrew from the conversation, who gave up, or maybe who never apologized. This is true. It's true in almost all of our lives. You still remember the comment that someone made about you 5 years ago. You still feel the sting of the text that they never replied to you with. You can replay the moment where you were embarrassed in a group of people over and over again. You can feel the shift of a conversation when someone made a comment about you. We don't forget debts. We don't. We file them. We don't call it keeping score, but that's exactly what it is. And I think Jesus knew this about us, is that yes, we do keep calling it score, but he knew that we would do this. So one day he tells a story about a man who did exactly what we do internally. He kept collecting debts, small slights, old wounds, unfinished apologies, relational invoices that never got paid. He kept track of. As we're about to see in this story that we're going to open up to today, Jesus' story begins as we expose something that we don't like to admit, is that we are better at remembering what people owe us than remembering how God has forgiven us. And if you're not a Jesus follower in this room today, or you haven't made that decision, or maybe you are a Jesus follower and you're just struggling with life, this is probably, it may feel a little bit irrelevant, but for us as Christians, we're called to be like him. We're called to be like Jesus through our attitudes and our actions, not for God's love and acceptance of us, but so that we can put on God's love for all others to see. And here's what we're about to learn. We're about to walk into a story that I think is truly, truly important. And I want us to lean in this morning as we open up his word. And we're going to set up the second lesson of love from Jesus. And we're going to start with Peter. Peter didn't know, we don't know exactly what happened to Peter, but Peter was ticked. He was not happy with someone. He was definitely felt like he was wronged. And something went down and Peter is upset and angry. And he's ready to get even. So today, if you have your Bibles or you have your Bible apps, feel free to open this up. We're going to be Matthew chapter 18, and we're going to start in verse 21. If you don't have it, that's okay. We're going to have it here on the screen as well, and you can follow along. But we're going to see that Peter is truly inquiring on what Jesus needs him to do in this moment. So in verse 21, it says this, "Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, 'Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? Translation for this is, what's the limit? How far do I need to go? What's the line? At what point am I justified in holding on to this debt with this person? Where's my limit? And rabbis in Peter's time, they often taught to forgive 3 times. And then on the 4th time, you're no longer obligated to forgive because they're just going to disappoint you again, right? So Peter, he thinks he's being really smart and philosophical. He doubles the standard and then adds one more for good measure, and he's not being petty. He says 7 times. He thinks he's being deeply spiritual. But here's the thing, is that what Jesus is about to do is he is about to completely turn this upside down. And 7 times seems like a lot. But here's the truth that we don't say out loud is we want a limit. I don't know about you, but sometimes I wish there was a limit of how many times I could forgive someone. Or we say it a different way, and it's this. What is the limit of love? We want to hold on to that grudge. We want that to wait for that repayment. We want the other person to carry the weight that we carried because we think it's only fair for just for a little while. We want to have that ledger stay open because it feels like we have moral leverage over someone. We tell ourselves that the bitterness that we hold is a shield so that we don't get hurt again. We want to believe that holding on to the debt gives us some power. But here's the uncomfortable reality in this, is that holding on to the debt may feel like control, but it always turns into a cage. It turns into a prison. The longer you hold it, the tighter it holds you. So the tension isn't, should I forgive? I think all of us in this room can agree that I should forgive, right? That's pretty normal. But the real tension is, how do I let go of something that's truly still hurts? How do I love someone who made loving them so difficult? How do I release a debt that still feels unpaid? So Peter brought Jesus a math question, but Jesus exposes Peter's heart problem. So in verse 22, it says this. Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. In 77 or 7 times 70 in multiple different translations. Jesus doesn't correct Peter with a bigger number. He completely destroys the idea altogether. The number is symbolic. Jesus is saying, stop counting. There is no limit. Love doesn't keep a forgiveness scorecard. Peter wanted a number, but Jesus wanted him to change the nature of his heart. Now, if you're counting, you're not really forgiving. You're just managing a payment plan. You're just walking along, okay, I'll forgive them because of this one. This little thing they did to me the other day, I'll forgive them that because they've had a good week. They've done a good job. But this other stuff, I'm going to hold on to that. I'm not letting that go yet because that's leverage. I need that, right? To punctuate this massive point, Jesus tells a parable and a story that I think is so powerful. So as we are jumping into that in verse 23, I want you to really lean in and listen. So in verse 23, it starts off like this. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold was brought to him. Now, in this story, the king equals God, and the servants equal the people under his own authority. So us, right? And 10,000 bags of gold equals 10,000 talents. This is absurdly huge amount of money. This is, 1 talent equals around 20 years of wages. So 10,000 talents is 200,000 years of work. This was intentional. Jesus intentionally chose that number because your debt to God is beyond your ability to repay. And he wanted this to be so clear in this story. The servant situation that he's in is hopeless. There is no way in his life that he can repay what he owes. This is the spiritual reality that we live. You don't make up your sin, like I said before, with just a better week. In verse 25, it says, since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had to be sold to repay the debt. So this is pretty normal. In this day and age, this is a normal thing to do. This is the king's first response, is justice, not mercy. In the ancient world, selling a family into slavery was just a part of the punishment. This was the expected outcome. So you can imagine Jesus telling this parable, it's the right and reasonable thing to do. Everyone's nodding their head going, yeah, I get this. This is normal. This is pretty typical. But in verse 26, it continues. And it says, at this, the servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay back everything. The servant's master took pity on him. He canceled the debt and let him go. The servant promises the absolute impossible. There is no way he can repay this debt. But he says, I'll pay back everything. The king knows it's not true, but yet he still chose compassion. There's two key verbs that matter in this statement is that the king canceled the debt and he let him go. The servant asked for more time, but the king gave total release. He says, I'm not going to set you up on a payment plan. I'm just going to cancel the debt, and you are no longer bound to owe me this repayment. No restructured payment plan, no extended deadlines. It was erased, gone, no longer important. That balance was missing, completely gone. As we see in this next part of this story, we see that canceling the debt and letting him go is an extension of forgiveness. It's the heart of the gospel. He doesn't get an extension. He got truly a miracle. There's no way he should have been able to be let go, but he was. Love doesn't collect what it has a right to collect. Love cancels the debt and lets it go. Now here's where the story takes a really powerful turn, and this is what speaks to me the most in verse 28. It says, but when the servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 silver coins. He grabbed him and began to choke him. Pay back what you owe me, he demanded. Now, there's a key word in here that I think is really important, is found. It implies that he went looking. So after this man was just canceled of all of the debt that he owed, a lifetime of wages, more than a lifetime, he went and found one of his other servants that owed him just 100 denarii, which is about 100 days' wages. It's not a small amount of money, but it's definitely doable to pay that back, especially compared to what he owed. The forgiven servant acts like he has no idea what just happened to him in the verse prior. This is meant to feel disgusting, but it's also meant to feel familiar. This is what bitterness looks like to God. Forgiven people choking others for smaller things. If you're a Jesus follower, here's the point Jesus is making. When you won't let go of what someone did to you, you are that man with your hands around their throat, forgetting what God forgave you. So in verse 29, he continues, his fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, be patient with me, and I will pay it back. Sounds familiar, right? Same posture, fell to his knees. And he told the servant, just please give me another chance. And this man's promise was actually reasonable. This could be repaid. He could pay it back. In verse 30, but he refused. Instead, he went off and he had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. He refused, straight refusal, no dialogue, no wrestling. That phrase, he refused, is key. Unforgiveness is a choice. It's not an accident. That's something you stumble upon. It's a choice. Verse 31, It says, when the other servants saw what had happened, they were outraged and went and told their master everything that happened. Verse 32. Then the master called the servant in. You wicked servant, he said, I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you? 34. In anger, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all that he owed. Now, it sounds harsh. It sounds incredibly, painful and horrible. But Jesus is making a point here. Jesus is describing the internal spiritual consequence of refusing to forgive. The punishment the man experienced mirrors the punishment that he chose for others. Meaning, he put others in an emotional prison. Now he lives in one. He was withholding mercy from this other servant, and now all mercy is being withheld from him. He inflicted torment on this poor man that could have paid it back, but now the torment becomes from his environment. This isn't God being cruel. It's Jesus showing what unforgiveness does in your life, what it does to a person. Unforgiveness forms the bars of your own cell. So right here, Jesus is showing us something visually. Whether you realize it or not, unforgiveness doesn't happen all at once. And so maybe something gets built, right? Maybe I remember what someone said to me at work. And really made me feel terrible, and I was having a really hard time navigating what was happening, and it hurt. I wish the person was nicer to me, so you know what? I'm just not going to talk to that guy anymore. I'm going to just kind of avoid him because the way that they treated me wasn't great, right? Maybe the next one. Maybe it's someone didn't call me on my birthday, right? Something simple. Maybe someone didn't reach out to me when I was going through in a time of need, and just the unforgiveness starts to kind of boil in my heart, and I go, okay, man, that's two now. That's two things in my life that have happened, and I'm getting hurt, and I don't like it. This isn't fun, and well, maybe there's another one. Maybe someone did something to you and you assumed why they did it. You decided to fill in all the gaps of how they thought about you and how they were treating you, and you were like, you know what? I can't believe they hate me. I'm going to start really just making sure that I'm separating myself from them because I can't understand why they wouldn't like me. You start to fill in the gaps, and those gaps become real. They become your reality, and you start thinking, I can't believe they would treat me that way. And because you're hurt and because you're struggling with everything, well, maybe it's because now you're expecting someone to reach out to you. And guess what? No one did. You have this expectation that someone's going to reach out to you, and you're thinking, well, surely they see that I've been hurt. They've witnessed everything that's happened to me so far. Surely they would reach out and want to help me. So you just sit there silently, waiting for someone to reach out, but yet you go, but I'm not going to say anything because it won't mean as much to me if I reach out or if I initiate it. Well, maybe this next one is you replay a situation of embarrassment over and over and over again in your brain. We do this often. We think of things that we were the most embarrassed in or the times that we were the most hurt, and we replay it. And it starts to distort, and we start to think about all the bad things that people have said to us and all the offenses that we've experienced in our life, and we start going, man, I really, really need to just be separated from those things. Because every time I play it, that fence gets longer and longer and longer. Well, maybe this next one is a conversation that you never had. Maybe it's with a friend or with a spouse or with a parent, with a sibling. You expected to have a conversation with them and you were hoping that you would have some sort of resolution, but yet that person never picked up the phone. And you're hurt. And you're harboring all of that unforgiveness in your heart, and it's starting to become bitterness, and you're starting to go, this is getting ridiculous. There's no way that people could actually love me because look at all the things that they've done to me. Look at this distance between me and this other person. Here's the thing. You know, a lot of times we want to have a conversation with the person on the other side of the fence. You know, you want to address it, but then you pulled back and you separated and you called it peace, but it was really just avoidance. And so we have another one. And this one's just the scorecard that we keep. This one is the one where we go, you know what? This is everybody else gets lumped into one. Because of all the things that I've experienced and how I feel that no one really likes me and they're treating me no good way, I'm putting everyone that makes a comment that I don't like or who doesn't call me when it's my birthday or doesn't do all the things that I was hoping for, I'm going to put them right there. Because I tried. I tried to forgive and they just failed me. They didn't reach out. Or they didn't say the right things, and those other people failed. And this last one's really important because this one feels very justified. This plank feels very wise because all these different things are full of hurt. This last one is a shield. I can't talk to so-and-so because look what they did to me. Look how they treated me. Look what they said. This is my boundary. I'm just protecting myself because they haven't had the chance to come talk to me and apologize for what they've done. And I can't let that happen again. I can't forgive them for what they've done. What started to turn into, as it started out as a fence, has turned into a cage. Let's see, what if my spouse is on the other side of the fence? I can't have a conversation with her because I have all these offenses that have built a fence between me and that person. And see, here's the problem. Nobody did this but you. Nobody locked the door but you. It happened one unresolved hurt ever at a time. Every offense built a fence separating you from your family, your spouse, your coworkers, but most importantly, separating you from God. Because here you are, you're at this part of the fence and you're going, God, I don't understand why nobody likes me. I don't understand why this is so frustrating. I don't understand why I'm going through so much pain, but yet I have put so much unforgiveness and bitterness in my heart that I can't even have a conversation with the person on the other side of the fence. When we don't forgive, our Heavenly Father treats us like He treated that servant. It says this in verse 35. This is how my Heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother and sister for your heart. Jesus isn't teaching you that you earn forgiveness by forgiving. He is teaching that withholding forgiveness reveals a heart that hasn't actually grasped God's forgiveness. This is the most important clarity in this whole entire story, is that in the kingdom, forgiven people forgive. Jesus isn't threatening you. He's diagnosing your heart. If forgiveness can't come out of you, it means that forgiveness hasn't truly gone into you. Jesus' point is painfully clear. He says this, loving like Jesus means forgiving like you've been forgiven. Jesus is not just teaching forgiveness in this moment. He's teaching how love behaves when it's hurt. The core truth from this passage is love lets go of the debt because Jesus let go of ours. And if you want to live and love more like Jesus, you must let go like Jesus. But here's the tension that you and I experience. And let's be real about this for a moment. The reason people need to be forgiven is because they did something wrong. They did something worthy of punishment, right? And we feel that way. Perhaps this is why Jesus talked about forgiveness so much, because he understood that we as humans, as sinful humans, understand that. And here's the thing. There is the greatest limiter of loving like Jesus is our unwillingness to let go. You can't love someone that you're still billing emotionally. You can't love someone you're still punishing. You can't love someone that you're keeping in emotional debt. This isn't some psychology thing. This is the core argument of Matthew 18. And it's the consistent teaching of Jesus. Unforgiveness makes love impossible. How could I possibly love someone across this fence when I can't even get out of my own way? And all this unforgiveness and bitterness is keeping me from having conversations that are productive and important and are like Jesus. Love moves forward, but unforgiveness pulls back. Love is open-handed, but unforgiveness is clench-fisted. Love says, I desire your good. Unforgiveness says, I demand repayment. These two cannot coexist. You cannot love someone that you are still taxing emotionally. The number one thing that stops love in marriages, families, friendships, and churches is unresolved hurt, because resentment suffocates love. Once resentment takes hold, love suffocates. You've seen it. Couples become roommates, friends become distant, families become cold, churches become divided, not because someone messed up. Not just because someone messed up, because someone held on to the mess. Someone said, I'm not going to let that go yet. By the way, Jesus didn't just bring this up once. Jesus connects love and forgiveness constantly. Everywhere Jesus teaches love and forgiveness, this is the hinge. Love your enemies, right? Requires forgiveness. Bless those who curse you. Requires forgiveness. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. The highest expression of love, right? The Lord's Prayer, Father, forgive us as we forgive. Forgiveness isn't an add-on. It isn't some premium subscription with love. There is a part of it. Forgiveness is the mechanism that makes continual love possible. Jesus' point is plainly clear. Nothing limits love faster than a grudge. Real love has no limits because Jesus' love has no limits. You know, I've been in this line of work long enough to know that while all of this is conceptually and theoretically true, but in real life, this is not easy. And it can feel impossible. If we were sitting in here today and you told us stories about your life and all the hurt and the pain that you've gone through, we would probably sit here and sympathize with you and go, you know what? You should not forgive them. Because that's crazy what they did to you. We would encourage you to take revenge. But see, that's not the point. If this is how you feel, then good. You're being honest. And this is exactly where Jesus meets you, because Jesus never calls you to do something that he hasn't already done himself in the most extreme moment imaginable. Look at the cross. Just for a moment. Jesus is not forgiving after his wounds healed. He's forgiving while his wounds are being delivered. He's hanging there on the cross as the spear pierces his side, and he's saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He is not just forgiving them after people come to their senses. He's forgiving them in real time. Soldiers driving the nails through his hands, his wrists, the leaders mocking him, his friends betraying him, his friends insulting him, friends that have abandoned him, and yet he still says, Father, forgive them. The criminal beside him is cursing him. This is what love looks like when it has no limits. He already canceled your debt. He already let you go. He already chose mercy over repayment. He already chose love without limits. And when his love fills your heart, you no longer need the bitterness to protect you. You no longer need the unforgiveness to be built up in your life to protect you from the people that you truly love. You no longer need that ledger to empower you. You no longer need to hold anyone hostage to feel safe. Jesus didn't forgive them because they were worthy. He didn't forgive you because you were worthy. He forgave them because he is love. And you can do the same today. And that's why I think this story in this passage is so powerful, because this is where you can forgive. Not because it's easy, but because or because they earned it, not because you feel better instantly, but you can forgive, you can let go because Jesus already loved you like this. Because the love that forgave you is the love that frees you to forgive others. Imagine waking up tomorrow without repaying the debt, without carrying the resentment, without dragging the weight, without needing them to pay. Imagine what that will feel like. Your heart would be outside of that prison, when the fence would no longer be there and it would be demolished, or you can have those conversations. All that unforgiveness gets washed away. See, love cancels debt instead of collecting them. So as the band makes their way back out, we're going to sing a song. It's a new song, and I'm excited about it today. And I want to do something today where it's a little bit different. You know, most of us in this room, I know most of you in this room, and here's the thing, and a lot of you have been coming for some time. You may know who Jesus is. You may be following him, and here at Thomasville Church, we believe in one thing, and that's to lead people to find and follow Jesus. And you say, Nick, I've been following. I've been following for a long time. But what's that one thing that you need to forgive today so that you can continually love more like Jesus? And so there's nothing special about this stage. There's nothing special about this room, these seats. And so in this moment, during this song, if you feel the need to pray, I want you to, whether you gather with people around you or you come down front or you want to pray with one of us, myself, Rob, or someone from our team, I want to encourage you to do that. Because if there's bitterness still in your heart today, the only thing it's doing is hurting you and separating you from Jesus. So as the band starts to play and we're going to sing this song, I want you just to be in this moment. Ask God, who do I need to forgive? Maybe you know him. Maybe you're sitting next to him. Maybe you'll see him at lunch. This is a moment for us to get closer to Jesus. Not for our sake, but for the sake of others, so that we can display God's just wonderful and great love. So I'm going to pray. And I want to encourage you to take the time to pray yourself. Like I said, feel free to come down front, feel free to stay in your seats. It doesn't matter where it is, as long as there's obedience to forgive. Father, thank you for this moment. Thank you for this time. Thank you for this story that we can hear and we can learn that forgiveness is so important. And that we can forgive because of what you forgave us. Lord, you sent your son and he was hanging on a cross and he was being punished. He was being pierced, and yet he said, Father, forgive them. God, I pray that I can have that same mentality today. No matter who hurts me or no matter what I go through in my life, that I can look at them with a clear heart and conscience and say, God, I forgive them. Lord, you know what I've been through. You know what these people have been through. It's so easy for us to just stay focused on how we feel, but God, let us be focused on what we can do because of how you've forgiven us. There is no limit to love, Lord. 7 times 70. There is no stopping your love. You know me pray. Amen. Stand and sing with us.